If everybody can take their seats, please. Thank you. Good morning. I will call on our esteemed clerk if she is ready to call the roll.
She's ready. She might not be esteemed, but she's ready. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Commissioners Morse.
Here.
Merchant.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Hildenbrand. Steck.
Here.
Ponstein.
Here.
Vice Chair Burl.
Here.
Commissioners Coleman.
Here.
Halsted.
Here.
Teal.
Here.
Sparks. McLeod. Hennessy.
Here.
Oliver King.
Here.
LeGrand.
Here.
Womack.
Here.
Faber.
Here.
Pekla.
Here.
Morales.
Here.
Bujak.
Present.
Chair Green.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 members present, 1 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda item 3, which is our invocation, and I will call on Commissioner Merchant.
Thank you. Heavenly Father, as we begin this meeting, we start by asking for humility. Whenever ideas are shared, there will always be the temptation for us to be proud. We will be tempted to defend our ideas too strongly. We will be tempted to dismiss others' opinions without carefully considering them. But we know that God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. Help us to approach this meeting with a humble heart, open to hearing and learning from one another. Let your Spirit guide our discussions so that we may come to decisions that are not just based on our own understanding, but also on your wisdom and guidance. We thank you for the reminder to remain humble and seek unity in all that we do. May this meeting be a reflection of your love, grace, and humility. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you very much. We have 2 special orders of business today, and the first is a employee recognition, and Al and I are going to go down to the front for that.
Good morning. It is our pleasure this morning to do a Kent County Quality Service Employee Award for external service. One of Kent County's core values is to provide high-quality service to internal and external customers. We are here to recognize Stephen Hendrickson from the Kent County Sheriff's Office, who was selected as a Quality Service Awardee for the 4th quarter of 2024. Before I read the rest of this, Stephen, why don't you come on forward with your assistant. Stephen was nominated for exceptional external service. The individual who nominated Stephen for providing high-quality service to our community wrote, "On Monday, we're at the 17th Circuit Court as our daughter was at a hearing to get a PPO upheld. Given the circumstances of the case and being in the same room as the man who abused our daughter, we were all anxious about being there, but were greeted by Deputy Hendrickson and his K-9 Ghost while waiting for the hearing to begin. Deputy Hendrickson took the time to talk with us about Ghost and even had Ghost go through some training exercises for us. This put her at ease and in a better state of mind to proceed with the hearing. After the hearing, he also walked us out of the courtroom and allowed our daughter to pet Ghost. We are incredibly thankful for Deputy Hendrickson's compassion for us and our daughter and wish him well in his final year of service to the community." Didn't know that part. Please join us in congratulating Stephen for his notable contributions to the customers of Kent County.
Can we get Ghost too? Let's get Ghost too. Yeah, good. Good, perfect.
One more. And one more.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks again, Nikki. Appreciate it. God bless you. Thank you, Al, and thank you, Deputy Hendrickson. I wish we should be doing employee recognition for the K-9 for Ghost, too. Maybe we think about some pup treats or something. Great. Okay, with that, we will move on to item 5B, the Kent County 2050 Headwater Framework. This is going to be a presentation from Al and the staff, so please take it away.
All right, thank you. So one of the things we've been working on the past couple of years with funding provided by the board for organizational improvement and employee development was to work with a group of community organizations and community leaders to develop a vision for what 2050 might look like in Kent County. West Michigan, it's called our secret sauce, that, we collaborate well, we get tri-sector collaboration, public, private, nonprofit, and that's how many of the great programming, many of the great facilities that we enjoy as a community have come about. And the point of 2050 was we're in a rapidly changing world. And with the way organizations come together is very organic. And the idea was if we had a kind of a greater buy-in to a kind of a general framework for the future, that would help guide the number of the tri-sector organizations in their strategic planning, so that ultimately, we land there together. Obviously, this is a framework. It's a ways out in the future. It's going to change over time, but it is a good, I think, picture at the future and what's important. I think that one of the other benefits, I think partnerships will happen sooner with a shared vision. And so I think you'll hear from 3 of our steering committee members today. So and Jesse will start off after me. Jesse Harris, our management analyst, has been working on this. Josh has also had a big hand in working on this. And then we're delighted to have Michelle DeWitt from United Way, Holly Johnson from Fry Foundation, and Randy Thalen from The Right Place, who will all say a couple words in the presentation. So without further ado, Josh Spencer will pick it up from here.
Yes, thank you. So really so what is strategic foresight? So it's a process that's used by many large organizations, our own Department of Defense, federal agencies, to think about, you're really starting for where do you want to go? Where do you see, the organization, where do you see the conditions on the ground, 25, 30 years down the road? And then from that, it's kind of going backwards on, well, what do we have to do to get to that point? And what happens if we don't implement some of these things, and what happens if we stay on this, status quo, or what happens if we regress? What does that future look like? And it's your ability to be able to plan for the future, think differently about some of the challenges that you're facing today, and what the further, future implications. And it really is part of just being, for Kent County, for a community to do this. It's really, how are we good ancestors? How are we thinking about our future, our children's future, and what do we have to get right to realize a future that we all kind of foresee? So, really, next slide here. So, nope, I'm gonna go back. So we brought in an expert. So Rebecca Ryan is nationally recognized as a futurist, is what she calls herself, and her team, and they have a process that they've developed. Again, they've been the ones that have worked with many of those organizations, Department of Defense, through this process, and really facilitate our community to think through what future we would like to see, and what do we have to do to get there. And so really what you're going to see today, this is not Kent County's framework as a government. This is really something that for our community and for us to follow. So when I've showed this to other folks, like, well, Kent County's going to start doing this or that, it's like, no. But it's important to us that those things are handled for Kent County to be successful in the future, and impact even our own services are impacted if we don't get this right. So I want to walk you through just so you appreciate kind of the process that we went through to get to the framework that you're going to hear about in a moment. So really the first phase, we had a lot of our own research on, well, what are the trends that are impacting Kent County, our residents? And we asked a lot of our organizational partners to share their data with us, education, healthcare, workforce development, housing, all those kind of things. Like, what do we know of the current trends, and what can we work have we done to kind of forecast what we can see? And we really started there. And then we took those, big bucket trends that we really felt were impacting and we were very extensive, and we did an initial survey of community leaders. So we had 276 participants in that initial survey, and these are government leaders, these are local nonprofit executives, leaders for neighborhood associations, things like that represent certain groups, and we tried to again be inclusive of our entire county, and we got a great response, and so they really ranked kind of these trends based on their priorities. And so as a second phase, we took this, the results of that, and we had some in-person engagement. There was 110 participants. Again, these were government leaders, philanthropic leaders, community leaders, coming together and really evaluate those trends based on, what is most important, what's most impactful to our county, and how prepared are we to handle these challenges. And so you see just a snapshot of some of that, and you probably won't be too surprised on some of those responses. We heard a lot of workforce development, housing, childcare, really the core issues that we hear a lot about. But it also allowed us to talk about, what do we need to do? How do we need to be prepared? And those were really great discussions. We held them at GRPS University over a course of 2 days. And so taking that, so every point we're distilling this down, Rebecca Ryan's team created a series of scenarios, so that really took those trends that we identified as like most important. Perhaps we're not prepared for these trends, and what happens if they had a scenario where it's like, well, what if we get everything wrong? Like, worst case scenario, what if we stay on the current path? And there's two that's like, well, what if we get these right? What are some options? And try to just think about it from a perspective of, well, I'm living in Kent County, 2050. What am I experiencing in those situations? And it allowed the steering committee that we formed to think through, okay, well, what kind of things are essential throughout these scenarios that we have to get right, and start to again still down to big kind of topic areas. And so again, great discussion. And then we took those big topic areas, and we did another community survey, and this one was more extensive. So we wanted everybody in Kent County, to be able to provide their input. And there's a survey tool called All Our Ideas, where they took these, what we were calling crossover levers, and it put them up, and you were two choices, and you can stay there and do it for 3 hours if you wanted to. Two choices, like what's more important? And if neither of them seemed like it was more important, then you can create your own, and that was actually entered into the system. So even our residents' ideas were kind of entered into this process, and were being ranked by our residents. And I think we had 17,240 votes throughout this process, which was great to see that much engagement from our residents. And then from that point, we really, I can't remember what the next slide was. So. Yep. So this is what the survey tool looked like. So the crossover levers are popped up, and then again, you can enter in your own idea if you didn't like either of those options. And then so we really took the results of that survey with everything else that we've done, all the research, all the feedback from the local, from the in-person engagement, from the other surveys. We held some of our own focus groups for areas that we felt like, well, we really didn't get a lot of engagement from the educational leaders. So we had a focus group of superintendents in Kent County. We really didn't get a lot of our foundation partners that are big ideas. So we held a group of foundation directors, and really came, and we took all that, and that's where we did the work of developing the framework. So that really has been going on for a while. It was really, it was a tedious process to think through all that information, and how do we organize in a way that's memorable, that we can organize it and organize the work that we're doing at Kent County, as well as the work of all of our partners. That's really, that really covers the whole gambit of what we need to address to realize a future, again, looking to 2050 as our goal. And so you see here, now we started in September 23. We're now in 2025. So again, it's we're nearing on about a year and a half of work, and that work will continue. So I want to turn this over to Jesse Harris, who's going to talk through the framework that resulted from all that work that we did over that period of time.
morning, Commissioners. So as Josh said, I want to rewind here. This has been over a year and a half in the making, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to finally be able to share it with you guys this morning. But I'm sure as you've been listening to the presentation and looking at what you have before you, probably wondered, why Headwater? So part of strategic foresight and looking into the future requires a thing called backcasting, or essentially looking into the past to be able to identify those patterns, those trends, those things in our community that have withstood the test of time throughout generations. And when you really think about it, one of the prime examples for our community is the Grand River. I mean, it's been the center of transit, it's been the center of commerce and recreation. And some of our earliest development happened along the Grand River. You know, back in the day, you had trading posts, our first major city being built across the river, steamboats and rowboats and fishermen and trains all sharing the water in some sort of capacity together. And 150 years, 200 years later, we're still doing that same thing. I mean, that's kind of like our bread and butter here. It's the synergy that's kind of bringing our community together. And quite literally, I mean, it is the physical center point of our county. And just kind of a sidebar here, because I'm a data nerd, I had this curiosity last week of how many people live across the Grand River? And so I went in and drew a little 1 mile radius across the Grand River, and over 8% of our population lives within a 1 mile radius of the Grand River. So almost walking distance for some people, which I thought was pretty interesting. But our consultants, Rebecca Ryan and David Brown, do this work all over the country and have a plethora of community partners that they've built over the years. And so they have a pretty good idea of what makes a community unique? Like, what is a community's identity? And so when we were trying to think of a metaphor or something to represent this plan, we kind of had this aha moment of, oh yeah, it's probably the Grand River. And for those of you like me that didn't necessarily retain a whole lot of middle school earth science, I needed to get a reminder of what headwater actually meant. And so the headwaters is really that starting little trickle of water at the very beginning of a river before it grows into those larger rapids or the channels that we see in the branching tributaries. And at its core, that's what this plan is. That's a perfect metaphor for this plan, because it's our collective starting point as we set our sights on the future and the world of opportunity ahead of us. And so Rebecca wrote this beautiful introduction to the plan, which I feel like does a really good job at helping the reader that might not understand what this is have a certain mindset before absorbing everything in the plan. And there to the right is our wonderful 19-member steering committee. This work that you see here would not have been possible without the heart and the time and the effort that all of them put into it, and 3 of which you see here today, which you'll hear from in a little bit. There are really 2 key foundational elements to this plan. Our guiding principles there on the right, which you can probably kind of think of as our core values, but they're really our promise to the community and the lens that we're going to look through as we continue these conversations and as we start to drill down some action and implementation steps on this. And the other core area are our focus areas, which are our buckets, so to speak, that we're work within, which you'll hear about in a little bit. More of a technical aspect here. Each section is laid out with the same recipe, so you'll have the section that introduces the focus area and the vision, followed by a page with like a little bit more detail with 3 to 5 ambitions and some of that community data that we gathered. And that page is really trying to make a succinct argument and really lay out the importance of why this actually made it in the plan. And so I'll start diving into the focus areas. Our first focus area is live well. All residents live healthy, safe, and fulfilling lives with ambitions of affordable and accessible housing, care for all, comprehensive health access, superior educational opportunities, and safe communities. And Live Well is really like the foundation of our future vision, because we thought this was best placed first. Because when you really think about it, like a lot of things later in the plan aren't possible without having that core foundation of well-being. So this is really about making sure that everybody's basic needs are met. But going on the basic needs themselves, how do we create the conditions to make sure that those basic needs are met? And so you'll see a little bit of our data here. This focus area really shined in our public data. 9 out of our top 10 ideas from that public survey fit into this focus area right here. Affordable housing, first and foremost, was definitely the thing that was on the top of people's minds last spring when we conducted this survey, but closely followed by things like health and education. Our next focus area is Thrive Together. Kent County is an ecosystem of economic prosperity and cultural richness accessible to all, with ambitions of accomplished workforce, entrepreneurial support, and economic innovation. And this focus area is mainly focused on Kent County's economic ecosystem, working for everybody. So moving beyond living well, how can we make sure that people come here and prosper and thrive here? And how can we ensure that everyone has the opportunity to do so? I'm going to sidebar for a moment just to kind of give you a little bit of a flavor of some of the conversations of what's organized where in the plan. One conversation we had in this focus area is, should we put childcare and senior care here? Because as you all know, that's definitely more of like an economic workforce issue as well. And that's kind of an example of like those informal building blocks that we're talking about, because really you need to have those things set in place before you really consider thriving and having, a career, because you're not going to be able to move to an area that you want to have a job in if you can't afford housing, or you might have to settle for a part-time job instead of a full-time job if you can't afford childcare or if it's not available. So that's just a little bit of an example of, although some of these things are organized in a certain area, we really need to talk about these things broader than what they're laid out in the plan, because there is a natural intersectionality between a lot of these things. Our next focus area is Cultivate Community. Kent County is a mosaic of inclusive communities where people experience the cultural, artistic, and natural landscape it has to offer, with ambitions of inviting and distinctive places, quality parks and recreation, and welcoming and belonging. Excuse me. And this focus area is really about making Kent County a place where people feel like they belong and people feel like they only not want to come here, but stay here and participate in building that community. And in our public data, people really cared about the community development aspect and having those things that make us unique as a community and continuing to prioritize those things. And our last focus area is Be Resilient. Kent County is prepared to adapt and thrive in the face of future opportunities and challenges, with ambitions of a robust transit network, thoughtful growth and stewardship, and leaders of tomorrow. And this focus area is really about making sure that we remain adaptable and forward-thinking moving forward. And again, while there are a lot of other ambitions that could have been organized here, we left it for these three because these three in our mind really seemed like those ambitions that we're just scratching the surface on as far as conversations, or we're just beginning to work on, or maybe there's not as many organizations focusing on these things yet. And as you can see from the data here, public transit was definitely the strongest thing probably from this focus area that the community cared about. But not only the community development aspect, the physical infrastructure aspect people cared about too, and balancing that growth versus preservation kind of argument. And so before I turn things back over, I want to talk about the future for a moment. I think Holly Johnson put it best in our last meeting that this plan is not meant to substitute anything like our county strategic plan or our county priorities. This plan is really meant to supplement everything going on. Because maybe as I've been giving a run through over here, you're like, none of this is really new. Like, we already know all of this, right? And to that, I'd say, yeah, you're exactly right. Like, we're already doing incredible work in this area, and there are already organizations out there working on tackling these challenges every day. But if I've learned anything about Foresight in the past year and a half or so, it's probably as closest you can get to having a crystal ball without having anybody invent the crystal ball yet, in that we've had hundreds of community leaders gathered in a room talking for 3 hours with people that they've never met before about what they think could be possible between now and 2050. And I've worked here for 3 years. I'll be honest, that was probably one of the highlights of my career that I've had here so far. And hearing from all of these community leaders and how much passion they had about leaving things better than they found it. And that's really what this is at the core of it. So for a moment, just picture our community today. You know, we have really good upward momentum. We're already doing great things. But we're not immune to all of these long-standing challenges that we've had going on that impact, communities across the nation, if not across the world. And now you personally, picture what you think could be possible for Kent County between now in 2050. Now picture that if everybody is pointed in the same direction and is aligned and working on the same shared goals together. For me, I think the idea of the shared future that we build together is really far more exciting than the one that I picture myself. And as commissioners, I mean, you're used to this kind of collaboration daily. I mean, that's in your DNA as a commissioner, but really everybody has a role to play in this work moving forward. And that's really the only way that we're going to answer not what could happen. We've done the work and had the conversations and have the framework of what could happen. Now we're facing the question of what should happen between now and 2050, because those two things probably aren't the same thing. So we're going to need that collaboration and partnership moving forward. I mean, that's how you make transformational change. That's how you be a good ancestor. And that's how we're going to set ourselves up for the most success in achieving that wildly ambitious possibility for the future that maybe we didn't even think was possible today. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Josh to introduce our steering committee members about what's next.
Thank you. So when you think about, this framework, we have it, right? And then so what? So how are we going to use this, and how is it just not going to be this thing that we present and just you never see it again? So, one of the ways in which we plan at being used is all of our organizations that we partner with at Kent County, we depend on, using this to organize their work. And we have two organizations here that have actually started that already. I have Holly Johnson with the Fry Foundation, Michelle Van Dyke from the Heart of West Michigan United Way. I'd like them to talk a little bit about just their experience in using it up to this point. And hopefully that maybe, gives you an idea of how valuable this can be going forward for the organizations that we partner with. So I'll turn it over to them too.
Welcome, thank you.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Van Dyke. I'm CEO at Heart of West Michigan United Way. We are, as an organization, just in the process of drafting our 2025 to 2028 strategic plan and going to the board for approval in April. So the rollout of the Headwater 2050 framework was perfect timing for us. We were able to share it with our board. They were able to go through the draft and look for alignments between the Headwater 2050 vision and our strategic plan. As you probably are aware, our focus at United Way lies primarily in that live well and thrive together buckets. So we have gone through our strategic planning process with an eye on what the county is looking to achieve, so that we can ensure that we are part of that shared vision for this community going forward. You will find elements of this Headwater 2050 plan embedded throughout our strategic plan. And so I think I can with confidence say that Heart of West Michigan United Way will be seen as a contributor and a collaborator to this work going forward. And I'll turn it over to Holly.
Good morning. A lot of the same things that Michelle said, but first of all, Al, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this process. This process, the work that we did in the room, the conversations that we had outside of the room was very impactful, and I felt really lucky and privileged to be a part of the process. So at the Fry Foundation, as a family foundation, we continue to support broadly, but deeply in the areas of access to housing for all income levels, as well as early care and education for our littlest kiddos in our community. And this report bubbled up those two things as things that all of our community members really care about and that we're lacking in some ways, but working towards good progress. One of the things that we know as organizations that support community is that we won't always get everything exactly right. But when we're coordinated, when we plan together, when we work together, when we get broad-based community input, we're much more likely to get some slam dunks and to nail some things that can really help people thrive and reach their full potential. We have a saying at the Fry Foundation that we do nothing alone. So we do not want to be the kind of foundation that makes decisions in our own boardroom about what we think the community needs. We make decisions based on, we pick the areas that we want to support, but we make decisions based on what the community tells us they want. And we collaborate and we are nimble and we link arms with others to be able to provide and support the communities that the Fry family cares about. We just turned 50 years old last year, so we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year, and this year we are dedicating our time to strategy. We're not looking to undo all of our strategy and pick new focus areas, but documents like this are required reading for all of our staff and all of our trustees to be able to understand what the community is saying. And while it's really impressive that we had hundreds of community leaders in the room doing on this, what's really impressive is the almost 18,000 community members who had an opportunity to have a part and have a say in this too. So this will sit on the edge of our desks all year and beyond, so we can relay back, and as we build out a new strategy, we are grateful to have documents like this and honored to be a partner of the county. Thank you. And now I will turn it over to Randy Thalen, who is the president of The Right Place.
Thank you. Welcome back, Randy.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. First, just maybe 3 key points I want to make today. The first is the process. I really want to commend Jesse, Josh, and Al for really creating an engaged process. To have thousands of people across the community participate in this visioning and planning session is really important. Recently, I was at a conference and a colleague of mine from across the country they just did their strategy using ChatGPT. And I bet if anybody here typed in, give me a 4-point bullet strategy for Kent County, it would come pretty close to this. So he was pretty impressed with himself, but there's no buy-in when you do it that way. And this process that we've gone through here, I was a part of the task force, I saw it firsthand. There's more buy-in to this sort of planning exercise than any sort of ChatGPT AI-initiated plan could produce. And I think that's where you get the results, that's where you get the progress. So kudos to Al, Josh, and Jesse for leading that exercise. The second, I thought I would offer an example of how this type of vision can work on behalf of the community. Because as Josh said, this isn't a plan just for Kent County Commission and the Kent County Administration. It's a plan for the community. About 2.5 years ago, The Right Place launched an effort to create a tech strategy for our region. And very similar to this, it was not a plan that was owned exclusively by The Right Place. There are elements in it that we own and have to implement, but by and large, that plan, because of the engagement, invited others to participate. And as a result, you're seeing progress in our tech community all across the region. GRCC now has a partnership with Intel to do some AI incubation. Grand Valley State opened up a new college of computing. Ferris State, just north of here, opened up a new virtual learning center. We've seen new seed capital and venture capital come into our community. And of course, Tech Week has grown from just an idea to last year 16,000 people. All because that process really invited others to engage in that tech strategy, just like the Headwater Plan invites the community to engage. The last point I would make is, much like Michelle, The Right Place, we plan in 3-year increments. We're just now launching that strategic planning effort ourselves, and this Headwater Plan is going to provide some guidance for us as we go forward. We've been great partners with Kent County now as we celebrate our 40th year. This plan, this Headwater Plan, is going to inform our work going forward. So really thankful for the opportunity to participate in, and also thankful for the opportunity to present with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
So we want more organizations, more of our partner organizations to know about this framework and start to think about how they fit in, just like the 3 organizations that you just heard from. So that'll be a lot of the work that happens. The other part of this, though, is for each of those ambitions, we really have to identify, is there coordination occurring around each of those? Or are the organizations kind of working more in a decentralized manner? And it runs the gamut between all those ambitions. And if there are gaps, how can we play a role in convening and to bring about coordination? Otherwise, we're not going to move the needle in those areas. And so I think that is where we kind of see our role as a convener, not things we're going to take over, but we can bring the partners together to think about, how can we, get some coordination. And a good example while we're going through this process is the state and the city approached the county about the statewide 60 by 30 goal. And so the state, the governor has a goal of statewide 60% of our population having a post-secondary degree, credential, or certificate by 2030. In order for the state to hit that goal, Kent County has to exceed 60%, which we're on our way to hitting 60% by then. But we really need to exceed that for the whole state to meet its goal. And so they approached the county and like, would we convene the partners to come together and start to think about that issue in a different way, which we did, identified a lead in the Kent ISD. They just announced a goal of 80 by 30, and they're going through the process of setting a strategy. We're a part of that, but we're not directly leading it. But that's a value that we can provide in this and just identifying where there's gaps. And so I think that's more of what we're going to be doing. And then also those collaboratives, those leads are also identifying what are the metrics that we're using to evaluate each of those ambitions. How do we know we're even moving the needle in identifying strategies to hit that? So, that's going to be more of the work that we do as you roll this out. So with that, I guess we'll open up for questions.
Okay, questions from commissioners? Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and I like the headwater metaphor. I think that's good. I guess a river runs through it was taken already too. So, a couple, I guess, comments and questions. One of my kind of personal frameworks of understanding if county government is doing a good job is, does your average person, are they able to live a successful life and not have to think about it? Like, if everybody has to think about how county government's doing, we're doing something wrong. Like last week, so I coached 10-year-olds in soccer and headed to soccer practice, and there was a house that had township fire and sheriff's deputies outside, some kind of emergency situation. Like that's how a lot of people interact with county government. It's very rarely, and yet they're very thankful that we show up and make things happen when the need is there. And so I just keep that in mind, as there's a large portion of people that their kind of opinions aren't in this, and that's not a criticism, because that's okay. They're not engaged in the channels that are involved in the surveys and the community engagement and things like that, and that's okay, because I think it's a good thing that they're comfortable not being engaged. I think we just need to make sure to keep in mind that their voices of what makes Kent County a great place are important too, even though they're not really reflected directly in here. I did think, having taken that initial survey, the tool and the kind of side by side, I didn't love that. I know that's a small component part, but it just seemed a little bit like, I guess as the attorneys would say, kind of leading the witness, so to speak, with kind of pre-canned options of picking from. But my just two questions. One, page 6, the 68% of residents would recommend Kent County as a place to live. What are these crazy 32% thinking that wouldn't recommend? Is there any deeper data on that that would suggest what the people that took the survey and said no to that question are thinking?
So that was one of the pieces of supplemental data outside of the process itself. That's actually from our Zen City Community Survey, and so that's done quarterly. And so maybe that could have been moved a little bit between last year and this year, but I look at that 68% as, although that might be a D in school, it's a really good starting point, and it's a good benchmark of seeing, okay, we were at this point in time. Now we have our goal to get above that and continue to shoot and get that more improved. And again, that probably potentially comes down to maybe an accessibility issue, or who's taking the survey at any given point in time, or who's willing to take the survey. Because I know I've gotten that survey a few times and I've taken it, but at the same time, somebody might see that pop up on their stream and be like, nah, I'm just gonna scroll past that. And it's like, no, we need your input. We need your engagement in this. So that's why I encourage us to think about moving forward too, is you're right. engagement is always going to be something that we can always push ourselves to do better. So I appreciate you emphasizing that sentiment too.
Thank you, that's helpful context. And my last question is, there was on one of those slides, there's a photo of one of the engagement sessions. Everyone's laughing, and Administrator Vanderberg has his hand to his face. I just wonder what happened in that event.
Are you talking about that bottom left picture? Our consultant, Rebecca Ryan, I will probably attribute that. I don't know exactly what was going on in that one, but she has a way of being a stand-up comedian, I think, at sometimes too, in like how she communicates things. But at the same time, I mean, I love that picture so much because it emphasizes how much fun people have had with this process too. I mean, it is really exciting thinking about all of the possibilities that could happen in the future. And so, although it's serious work and it's good work and important work, we can also have fun while doing it too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for all the work that went into this. I'm sure it was a significant amount of time and investment, and I have a hard time supporting such a far-out framework 25 years in the future, when in my perspective is that I have residents that have far more pressing matters where they can't afford to stay in their house, and so I don't necessarily support looking outside of basically like a 5-year strategic plan, but I do think there's some valuable insights here, so I appreciate that. But my question though is, I'm just kind of curious, what was our investment into this? Like, how much did this cost?
I think it was about 160. Was that right, Al? Does that sound about right?
I think it was $180,000.
Okay, 180.
Thank you. Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Green. First of all, thanks to Al to let me play a small role in this process. It was interesting, to say the least, and to everybody who put all the work into generating this document. I think it's important for us at the county to understand what this is and what it isn't. As I understand it, is not a strategic plan for Kent County. It is intended to be an identification of sort of those big winds that are blowing in and across this county, in order to inform us at the county what we may be doing and how we weave that into the rest of the fabric of the county, but also to inform everybody else. We're not the only participant that make the future of Kent County. We are part of it, but a small part of it in some ways. It's the right place, it's United Way, it's everybody else, it's all of those other social agencies and organizations that have a significant part in moving us towards the future we want to accomplish. And so I think its value really is there in helping to instruct them. How do you see what you're doing? When you do your strategic plans, how do you do that in a way that weaves with what we're seeing this community wants to be long-term? So that, I think, is its real value. And likewise for us, it's informative for us. It is not our strategic plan, but we want our strategic plans ultimately to align with and to resonate with the themes we're seeing here. So thank you for that hard work. I assume that this needs to continue to be reformed because next year we won't be the same place we were this year. And so for it to be useful in that sort of big picture, and to go to Commissioner DeBoer, it's not the only informative document. There are lots of informative documents that we use. We make plans based upon next year, this year, 5 years out. But knowing where we want to go long-term and where our community sees it going long-term is really invaluable. So thank you for that work.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jesse, Josh, and Al, for your effort on this. Looking into the crystal ball 25 years is always a difficult exercise. There was a man we all know, Henry Ford, who was an American industrialist, an entrepreneur, and visionary. Once upon a time, he was asked, Henry, why do you spend so much time planning the future? And his response was profound: because I plan to spend a lot of time there. So I was looking at, this plan here for 25 years, and I'm like, holy cow, I'm going to be 92 years old in 2050. I plan on being here to see this plan roll out. So I appreciate, the effort and the exercise. I did have a couple questions. My first question is, when you were looking at this, the current population of King County is 661,000 people. Did you anticipate growth to what degree by 2050? How big will King County be in 2050?
I don't know the exact things off the top of my head, but in the digital version of this, there's kind of an appendix area in the back, and on the physical version, you can see, the blue area with the underline. Click on those links, and that has a lot of our supplemental information that we used in the planning process. I want to say, and, I'm scared of even saying it because I don't know if I'm right or not, but our population is supposed to continue to increase at probably the regular rate that it is right now, like by potentially 10% or being close to like that 700,000 mark. I know another one of our trends that we had in that first phase was growing diversity. So right now, I believe our people of color is about 25% for residents in Kent County, and I think that's supposed to grow to be closer to 50%. I think it's somewhere between 45 and 50, if I remember off the top of my head. But look at some of those if you have time, and that'll give you an answer to a lot of like the questions of these were the trends that were the guiding forces of this document.
Okay, I think that 10% is probably a conservative number, and I was just concerned because I had heard that in the 2050 review, we're talking about doubling in size, going to 1.2 million. That would not be manageable. I think 10% allows, the county to be more reactive in a way that we can manage that kind of growth. So that's good. And the second question I had is, in your discussion, did you talk about infrastructure? One of my biggest concerns about all this growth that we have is the roads. I came up 131 this morning, it was horrible. And, with all this growth that we have, we really need to be looking at, how do we transport, all these people that are going to be coming here and get them to their jobs if they're coming into the city or if the city grows. The roads have just been problematic and definitely need to be considered when we're looking at future planning.
Yeah, and that'll probably be in conversations moving forward too. We didn't necessarily have trend-based data in order to create this framework, but that's definitely been an ongoing discussion of not necessarily the numbers behind that, but the need for reliable and affordable transportation moving forward. So a lot of that, to Josh's point about trying to bring in and align and orient the existing groups, like the Mobility Task Force, for instance. We haven't set any of the milestones because the Mobility Task Force is already doing that kind of work and conducting that study. So that'll come back and inform potential milestones in this plan. So hopefully that answers your question just a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think you might want to partner with Grand Valley Metro Council on
Absolutely.
that question that I'm asking, because I do believe that is one of their views on the future, is looking at those kind of infrastructure.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you. Commissioner Sparks.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to say thank you to all the partners who are at the table. I've always heard from my mom, if you don't make a plan, then you plan to fail. And I kind of look at this as an investment, not a spending $187,000, but making an investment of giving the future generations a roadmap, something to look forward to. And of course, they're going to put their touch on it, so that'll be great. I'm very excited about the plan. I love seeing all the partners at the table, from housing to, our educational system, health systems, the foundations that are there, and the work that the United Way does. I really want to say thank you, but I don't see transportation here. So I'd like to see something with the transportation system maybe added, and also something with those with disabilities. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Oliver King.
Thank you. No offense to anyone who's on the steering committee, but I don't see any young faces, young people. I have two daughters, 26 and 24, who chose to work in Detroit or either go to Chicago, anywhere but here. And I hear from young people, I'm talking 20s, 30s, that they don't necessarily feel that it's a community for them, particularly young professionals. Did you survey the 20s and the 30s and the 40s? Because, like I said, I don't see them here a part of this steering committee, so I'm just wondering.
So that was one of the questions. I'm not sure if we asked age on the surveys to be able to identify that. We were very concerned about location and making sure that there was a good distribution of representation throughout the county. But, you know, to be honest, that has been one of our shortfalls in this, is who makes sense to be at the table, because there are a lot of different areas that we could look, and to pick one or two people to represent the youth even, again, seemed like a tall task to do, but we know, and we've kept that in the back of our mind moving forward, we need to think about different engagement things, whether it's going out to schools or making sure that their voice is heard in this. So, thank you for sharing that. I know it's probably just going to be one of the steps in the process, whether it's this year or moving forward as we continue to roll it out. And it's definitely something that we have been trying to wrap our minds around too, if that makes you feel any better.
Okay. And then I don't see Dr. Roby a part of this steering committee. So I don't see education.
Haven't posted.
Did I miss that? Oh, okay. That's Kentwood Public Schools, but not Grand Rapids Public Schools?
So not, invites were extended to a lot of folks that didn't accept, but GRPS was very, and other school districts were very involved in the process and were asked to engage in several of the steps, and they did, including, I mentioned the engagement we did directly with the superintendents as a whole, but yeah, so, yeah, there was a lot of representation from.
Was the NAACP also engaged in this process?
Yeah, they did, yeah, so, yeah, the representative of their organization attended the Big Sort, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Morales.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo Commissioner Sparks' thanks to the team for all the work that you put into putting this together. I like that it's, the way you presented the information and kind of broke down the different categories and everything is all great. I did have just a question about, under the resiliency aspect, about why we're not, I like that you have transit and sustainability and leadership, but not a lot regarding like extreme weather events or any other challenges we're going to be facing as, things kind of change in the environment. So I'm just wondering if that was part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely been part of the conversation, and that was one of our guiding trends at the very first phase of this, is like the growing climate impacts. And even in regard to population, like what can we potentially expect, as far as relocation and people wanting to move to different areas too. And so kind of to the points of that have been made about the document so far, it is very high level and intentionally non-specific, because it is really hard to predict, everything and get everything right between, now and 25 years later. And so it's we lumped it into that umbrella of thoughtful growth and stewardship, because that did capture a lot of the other conversations we were having too. So I'm sure that that'll be a continuing conversation moving forward in that ambition.
Commissioner Hennessy.
Thank you. I like this report a lot in as far as it goes. And of course, we're all sort of talking and trying to, you just said it's high level and non-specific, and Commissioner Steck said we are identifying the big winds blowing across the county. So trying to be cognizant of that, not being too specific. But I don't see a lot here on the rural character and the maintenance of the rural character of this county. We are obviously urban. There's obviously a strong urban context to this. And so how do we continue to have that emphasis on farmlands, the fruit ridge, the rural character of the communities? How do you see this? Where are the connections with this report to that aspect?
So certainly that is something that came up as we were putting this together. Rural communities are thinking about everything in this plan from their perspective, right? So housing in their perspective, transportation in their perspective, sustainability in their perspective. So it's throughout our plan, because this is a Kent County framework. the framework has to apply to all the communities that are in our county. So it's underlying, and then getting into, well, how do we address these, and how do we address these throughout different parts of our county? We were really intentional in ensuring that we were including a lot of the organizations and groups that are on the outside of the urban core, and the ones that are kind of engaged the most often. So we were intentional in bringing, and they were talking about the same exact things that the organizations within the city of Grand Rapids, city of Wyoming, city of Kentwood is. It's just how they're thinking about it's a little different, and what that means to them is different. So it's in there. It's just it's part of the groups that are working in that specific area to think about what these mean for them and how they're going to move the needle in those areas. So, and certainly for us, we have we have programs that at the county that address those things specifically, and we see that it's in there of what we're going to be doing. So, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That's what I wanted, that connection between the urban and the rural. And I appreciate that you were thoughtful in terms of how you were doing this. I want to say too, I really like that logo. I thought that, well, it's Star Trek, but the arrowhead, I don't know, it has an Indian type of influence to it as well. I think it ties historical to future, but not to put too much on that, but I thought that was really cool.
Al, do you want to give a rundown on your North Star metaphor on it?
Yeah, sure. I think that, again, this is great conversation. I really appreciate the thoughts. I think that, it was actually an Eisenhower quote, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I think that having a vision for the future, it isn't that detailed. It is like the North Star. So the North Star is something that has guided people as they move around, and it changes, it moves. And so this plan will shift as reality in certain areas descends on us, or when facts change, or the future. And so it isn't a fixed thing where everybody's going to throw in and make sure exactly what happens in the plan happens, but it is a framework that can be added to, it can be deleted from as we move into the future. But in general, when we talk to a whole lot of people today in Kent County, this is kind of the direction in general that is kind of our North Star, that it will be a guide, not a prescription, and a resource among many other resources as we conduct our strategic planning and as our partner organizations conduct their strategic planning. So I really love the North Star metaphor for this work.
Thank you. Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all. Echo all of the accolades that have been laid upon you so far for this great work. I had one comment and then one question. The comment is, I don't think yet I've heard some feedback on the appendices, Jesse, that you mentioned digging into. I've spent some time with those since the Headwater document was emailed out. I think they are fantastic, and I would encourage all of my commissioner colleagues and the community to take a look at those, because I think there are direct lines between what's in the document as the final plan and the trends that are highlighted in there. And I think, to Commissioner Morales' question, a lot of those details that might be missing in the specificity here, that's where I was able to find some of those pieces in the appendices. So thank you for that and the inclusion of all of that. The question I have is, we heard from our three colleagues that came up and talked about how we would be seeing the use of this document at Hearts of West Michigan and the Fry Foundation and the Right Place. How can we as commissioners be looking at using this, right? I mean, we've got the physical document. It will be going on my desk and be sitting there. But do you have suggestions or ideas for us up here on the dais about how we should be looking at this, knowing that it's a little bit general and a little bit non-specific, right? But that's the intent of the document.
Well, certainly, Randy, who I think he just left, so he actually had gone through this process in Omaha, and when I heard him talk about, this initially, really it was how you talk about the work that needs to happen, and using these, it was intentionally meant to be easy to remember and impactful as you think about that. So I think as you're thinking about the work of Kent County and just the work of all of us to make our county better, you can use that in the messaging for each of as commissioners to talk about just what we need to do and what we need to focus on. And then drill down to where, county is impacted. I would say also, as you talk to organizations in your community, in the communities that you serve, I think mentioning that this is and asking if they've heard of it and if they've talked to us and how they're incorporating it, if they have questions and how it's implemented, I think that's really helpful. You all have a broad reach throughout our county, and we want to get this message out, and we're going to be sharing more resources along those lines. But I think that would be really helpful because there's a lot of organizations that impact our communities. I worked in the nonprofit sector, for a long time, and I still learn about new organizations, sometimes through our commissioners that need assistance. And so I think sharing that widely as well, and we'll be providing more resources along those lines as well, would be very helpful.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Womack.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you for your great work and for bringing so many different partners from the nonprofit sector, educational and governmental departments together to work on this steering committee. And a lot of the information that you gave is feedback from the public. I've seen broadband in there. I've seen connectivity between our townships and our cities for transit, for public transit. And just as a commissioner, I would wonder if we still would be able to add some of the things because our public are coming from the needs that they need. And we're, as government officials, looking at it as the stewards, providing those needs. And some of those needs, as we talked about the population growth and retainment, of especially our college graduates and our youth when they grow up and they can make that decision to leave, is going to be very important that we have those job opportunities, entertainment activities for the young people from summer through winter. And one of the things as a steward of some of the funding that's coming from our taxes, what are we doing to attract businesses? For every technological breakthrough, we lose a lot of physical jobs. We see a lot of box companies and stores closing daily. We've had Amazon come to Kent County. We've had Switch come to Kent County. Are we looking at some other major companies that may be able to provide jobs for our youth in the future, and what we can do to make it more accessible and make it more attractive for those companies that will be emerging with jobs in the future, high technological jobs, to come to Kent County?
Well, a lot there. So we're getting into, the framework really is the why and the what. You're getting into the how, which is really the work that is happening and needs to happen. And really for us to really identify how it all plugs in, we have to do additional work. I mean, a lot of things you mentioned are actually the right place's role, and we contract the right place to do that work. So some of these areas it's very clear on who the lead is, and some of the areas less so. So everything you mentioned would be covered under the framework. It's just we have to organize some of that work, and then but it makes it a lot easier for a lot of things you mentioned. Where do I go when I have some of these questions, ideas? Even just learning who's doing this work. How do we make that easy for our residents to understand, as well as the organizations that are doing the work to understand, so they can plug in? A lot of organizations that I talk to, I'm just surprised with how often they're not invited to be a part of some of these collaboratives and some of these efforts, and sometimes how they're not asking to be a part of these. So I think it's really helpful from all those areas when you get into the how and how we structure the work throughout our county.
Well, thank you, because you did your job in the steering committee and the community of bringing these important issues to us. What's next for the steering commission would be my last question. What's next on the horizon for the
So now that we have the framework, I mean, all the discussion is about how do we implement this, and it's going to be a trial and error. I mean, we have a picture of what that looks like, but as we go through, we might think of other ideas of how this is useful, how we can better incorporate into the work that's happening, how we can get the word out better to the organizations that are doing the work, and how we can address the gaps that we identify as we organize the work under these ambitions. That's all the work that the steering committee is going to be taking on.
Well, thank you, and thank you for looking at a 25-year perspective, because as we do some great work today, I know we're still standing on the shoulders of people who were planning for us 25 years ago here in Kent County, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've got Commissioner Faber coming up and Commissioner Ponson on deck, and I'm going to cut off the questions from the commissioners at that point. So if you have further questions and you're not in the hopper, please feel free to reach out to staff, and I'm sure they're happy to help answer them. Commissioner Faber.
Sure, just an observation and then a request. The observation is, it's been interesting to me to see the county's role continue to evolve as a convener. And I think that's a great role for us. And it's a role that I think the community is asking us to do because we've built a lot of trust with the community. And so I commend you for convening, for bringing people together where the county's not just having a seat at the table, they're actually setting the table and bringing people together. And I think that is a role that will continue to serve us well as we move forward. And that we need to continue to evolve and recognize that is a role that we play in the community, is bringing people together and being somewhat of that neutral party that maybe doesn't have all the skin in the game, but can actually bring people together that do have that skin in the game. It's just a really important thing to continue to do. And then the request is, and maybe this is a charge to the steering committee, one last thing to do. Obviously, this will live on our new wonderful website. I'd really love to think about how that, where it lives on the website, can continue to help us evolve the plan. A framework to me means we're going to be hanging a lot of things off of it. And I know there's umpteen different plans that are out there that drill down more specifically into some of the areas that I identified in this plan, and then maybe also show us where there's still some gaps in planning or where we have some holes that we might need to fill in or be a convener to fill in. And so I would love the steering committee or others to think about how this does live on the website, how that might be an opportunity to collect stories or collect information on how the plan is being used, so that it continues to live on, and then that we use the framework in a repetitive way. So one way that we keep this document alive is that we use these titles or we use this framework in other ways as we kind of move forward. So that's it.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Thank you for bringing that up. Ideally, we would like to have its own standalone website outside of the county plan, just to kind of push forth the emphasis on this isn't a county plan, this is a community-wide plan. I don't want to give Sawyer Johnson any more fatigue from all of the coding that he's done on our new website, so that is something to come down the line. But another thing too to think about is this is our first starting point framework. This is the Headwater framework, and although we don't necessarily know what's next, we have bounced around the idea of having a 2.0 plan, because to some of the points that have been brought up here, 5 years down the road, even a year down the road, like we might be pointed in a different direction. And so maybe that plan is something like the rapid plan, you know, continuing on with that Headwater metaphor. But yeah, ideally we would have its own kind of headquarters online.
Thank you. Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Green. So, you know, back in the 80s, 90s, we always had 5-year plan, 10-year plans, you know, what our school is going to look like, our parks look like. And, you know, you look at what the world was like back then, you know, how long did it take every house to get a television, actual phone? And technology is not just doubling anymore. They're saying AI daily is increasing 10 and 100-fold. So we're looking at a plan at 2050, and I would gander a guess that in a few years, our world is going to be unrecognizable. Did that concern the committee, looking that far out with this new wave of AI and technology that is just consuming this world?
That came up quite a bit. I personally am not actually as concerned about when you look at what's in here, because I love history. I collect a lot of local history documents, and it's interesting to look back at what people were saying in the 60s, 70s, 50s, 40s. They're saying the same things we're saying now. It's just the vehicles through which these things are developed, or delivered are different, and they evolve. But the actual big topics are not different than what we're talking about now. there was still concern with housing, the changing job markets. I mean, these things are constant themes throughout our history. And I think there will be some changes, of course. Technology was one of those, right, as it evolved. But we didn't know that there was going to be an internet. We didn't know AI was science fiction then. And so I think at the big levels, there will be some changes, but I don't think dramatically in 30 years. Well, hopefully we're talking about it from a success story, but I think some of the same themes will still persist throughout our society. And so I think in some level it's going to be relevant, but I think we still have to be, we have to be mindful of changes and make sure that this does evolve as we evolve. So, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I'll be very brief as I chastised others for taking too long. Commissioner Hennessy bumped on it, so I've got a bit of bipartisan spirit here that I really want to encourage us to be intentional about bringing in folks that are not from the urban core and the six. We've gotten really good at being intentional about bringing in folks that are in those places that historically haven't had their voices heard. But I think in some ways we've done it at the expense of being intentional about bringing in the rural voices and the folks from outside of the county. So I really would love to see the Farm Bureau and Ag brought in on some of this stuff. I think we do a good job representing the broader business centers through folks like the Chamber and the Right Place, but I'd like for us to be intentional about bringing in the small business voices as well. Some of the service clubs like our Rotaries, Kiwanis, Lions clubs, that sort of thing would be great to get them in as they're sort of the, hands and feet in the community. Township Supervisors Association or representative thereof. This is not rural urban, but faith leaders I think is something that's really missing from this that I'd love to plug in. And I'm not just talking about Christians or Catholics or Protestants. I'm talking about all faith leaders and people that are, those kind of leaders in their community. So I just encourage us to continue to be intentional about bringing those in. I know it's hard when people just ignore the survey or they don't respond to the call, but I really wanted to encourage you to hammer those folks to and really push to get those voices at the table, even if they're unwilling in the beginning, because I think that'll be helpful down the road. That's it from me. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you guys, Jesse and Josh and all the staff. I appreciate our friends from United Way and Fry and the Right Place for being here as well. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is public comment related only to the agenda action items. I will note that the agenda action items are the approval of the meeting minutes from February 13th. So if you have comments on the approval of the meeting minutes or anything with that, we will take that at this time. Do you have something from that?
Yes,
Dee?
I did speak at that last work session, so I'm just going to speak on what I spoke on at the last work session.
I will note there is another opportunity for public comment in a couple of seconds here, so.
All right, cool. I just want to say this. I was just happy to be at the work session and being able to be at Kent County government because it presented me an opportunity to be on Fox 17 to speak to the United Nations. So happy that's in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your brevity, Dee. Appreciate it. Okay, anyone else for public comment related to the approval of those minutes? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 7, which is the consent agenda, and I will call on Commissioner Merchant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move today's consent agenda.
Moved by Merchant, supported by Coleman. No discussion, I assume. With that, this is a roll call vote. Call on the clerk to call the roll, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the motion to adopt the consent agenda, Commissioners Morse.
Yes.
Merchant.
Yes.
DeBoer.
Yes.
Hildenbrand.
Yes.
Steck.
Yes.
Ponstein.
Yes.
Vice Chair Burrow. Commissioners Coleman.
Yes.
Halsted.
Yes.
Teal.
Yes.
Sparks.
Yes.
McLeod. Hennessy.
Yes.
Oliver King.
Yes.
LeGrand.
Yes.
Womack.
Yes.
Faber.
Yes.
Pakla.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Bujak.
Yes.
Chair Green.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 yeas, 0 nays. The motion passes. The consent agenda is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now move on to agenda item number 8, which is public comment related to general county matters. Everyone is welcome to speak. Please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
How y'all doing? I'm D. Jones, passionate entrepreneur and visionary. I have gave you guys all a handout again. But first of all, I want to speak about something. So we have a partnership, the Youth Justice Influence Esports League, and I'd like to thank a partner, Steelcase. They brought one of the 523 buck gaming chairs to one of the kids that's the champion of this season. So thank you, Steelcase, for bringing us a luxurious chair. I definitely believe in the future in the Headwater framework. I have a picture and the innovation, and I'll just tell you what my vision of Kent County, and I'm 30 years old, so in 25 years, I'll be 55, and I know I'll be a billionaire. I'm pretty sure I'll be a billionaire in 25 years. But I see us being an innovative leader, a global leader. I see people having equitable access. I see the 3 House bills that Brian Postman has passed to actually adopt cryptocurrency, which is a big thing and helps do a political uncertainty and financial uncertainty. I see us eventually adopting that and being crypto leaders, attracting fintech business and blockchain businesses and some of the luxurious tech businesses, and some of those potentially being breeded here. Like you have here, D. Jones, who's an organic business leader. I think I should be on the steering committee of that. I've been able to go to the United Nations. I'm going to Hong Kong. I'm going to go to Hong Kong to do basketball and gaming camps. I'm going to 2 cities in China. I don't even know the other name of the city. Dan, I want to say 50% is not good free throw percentage, but it's good in a business partnership. So I just want to let you know that I see Kent County being an equitable, this crazy, innovative, this brilliant place where people can live, thrive, even in the rural areas, because I have friends and fraternity brothers that used to be on farmlands, and I used to go out in the woods and shoot guns with them, and we'll have a couple beers and stuff like that. And I see them being able to be innovative leaders and being able to lead in the farm and produce space. So I just see us being a beautiful county that's being able to lead. I'm already leading. I'm already doing things in 2025 that I know if I'm putting these things out into the universe and it's happening now, imagine what my 2025 in 25 years look like. I'm going to go speak to the United Nations. I'm going back to my hometown, Chicago. I'm going to be speaking to young African-American youth at GRCC tomorrow, Friday, speaking to a bunch of students about crypto and finances and digital currency and digital assets and just a lot of different things in our products and esports. And I'm just very thankful to be able to give back to my community, the county, and just be a leader, because I just naturally got it like that. I'm doing cool things, and I know it's going to have an impact on the globe one day, and I'm going to be one of the best global leaders to live one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. If you have that billion by 2050, we'll need some philanthropic dollars in here, so we encourage you to stick around. Hi, welcome. Please state your name and address, please.
Good morning. My name is Lily Peterson. I'm at 14061 Covered Bridge Road in Lowell. I'm a rural resident. I was here 2 weeks ago because I was interested in the conversation about potentially becoming a sanctuary city, and I'm back today to tell you what I heard that day and what I understood the messaging of the chair to be. I heard some folks express that there are people being targeted in spaces that should be safe for us, like schools and hospitals and churches, and detained without fair treatment or due process. I heard others respond in favor of law and order, seemingly regardless of what the laws are or who it might hurt. The thing that stood out to me the most was your statement about the issue, Mr. Chairman. I've read about you and I've heard you speak with kindness, and so I don't believe that I heard you correctly, but I want to tell you what I heard. What I heard is that the Kent County Board of Commissioners is going to be serving as a representative of the federal government in this issue toward the people. As an elected official, I had expected quite the opposite, that you would want to serve as the representative of our community to the federal government. And again, I believe you do. I'm sure I don't have to tell you all the ways that a person can come to be labeled as an undocumented immigrant, or the data about the role undocumented immigrants play in our great country, our beautiful state, and our wonderful county, or the statistics regarding the crime rate of undocumented immigrants versus American-born people. I trust that you know all that. And therefore you know that undocumented immigrants are just regular folks like you and me. They're our beloved neighbors and valued community members, and they're the ones being targeted and detained without free treatment. Myself and my community would want the federal government to know that they can't target us in safe places like schools and hospitals and churches and detain us without fair treatment. Again, I don't know if I understood your intended message, but that is what I heard that day. I do believe you, again, want to be the voice of our community, so I would ask that you please do whatever you can to ensure that every person in Kent County is safe in somewhere like a hospital, safe in a school, safe in a church, and that everyone in Kent County is treated fairly by law enforcement and our legal system, regardless of their current citizenship status. God's love predates our borders, and human rights should transcend our borders and citizenship and political parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Welcome back.
Hi, my name's Dorothy Cribbs. My address is 1980 Deerfield Court, and I live in Cascade Township. And I just wanted to thank the commission and the audience. I was at the last meeting, and I thought that we were very respectful of each other, and that I felt that people were listening to each other, and I respect that and think that we had a good conversation. I am part of or support Acton Institute, which is headquartered here in Grand Rapids. And I wanted to bring up, as far as the immigrant issues, they're having an event March 20th, The Immigration Wars, Ideas, Ideals, and Ideology. It is in the evening from 7 to 8:30, doors open at 6:30 p.m. And they are doing this in conjunction with another group that I support called Braver Angels, which brings together, the way that they put it is, red-leaning people and blue-leaning people to have respectful conversations. And Braver Angels also had it's out there on YouTube, a video that I only saw the first 30 minutes, but it brought up a bunch of the issues about immigration and things that I was not aware of. And it's called, you can find it on YouTube as Immigration 101, if you would like some more information. And I just wanted to share that with everybody to help understand, what some of the issues are, and that there's ways that people can become illegal, like when they overstay their student visas and stuff like that, but then they can get in there and not be targeted because they have a status that they're waiting. So anyways, it's a very tricky system. You need an attorney to even those that want to become citizens. It's a very tricky path, and we need to do some correcting on the federal level, of course. And I appreciate the commissioners wanting to follow the laws. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cribbs. Welcome back, Pastor Scott.
Thank you, Chairman Green. Greetings in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Daniel Scott, of course. In all due respect, Chairman Green, I would ask if I would not be able to share my exact address. My family and I have a lot of enemies, and we've been threatened numerous times, so I'd just soon leave it as a longtime resident of Kent County. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, we've had others that have done that in the past, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, or Commissioner Merchant. Appreciated your opening prayer. By the way, your first name, Jennifer, means fair one. So we could apply that two ways, physically in your office here. It's still Black History Month. And I just wanted to recognize several others that I appreciate in the African American community. Karen Whitsett, Democrat, African American from the east side of the state, and her bold and courageous opposition to the murders that are happening inside the womb. And she has spoken out against the quote-unquote Reproductive Health Act that Lansing put into law. Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome Sears, another African-American woman, on standing against murder in the womb, quote, "I'll get the ridicule, but it's the right action to take," unquote. And finally, Michelle Reynolds, another African-American politician from Ohio, saying this: "You cannot say Black Lives Matter if you are okay with killing black babies through abortion." And oh, how we need more politicians with that sort of boldness. Let me close by saying that according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the murder of black children in the womb, commonly called abortion, is the leading cause of death in the black communities. Think about that. It's the leading cause of death. You put AIDS, homicide, diabetes, accident, cancer, heart disease, all combined, and they don't equal the number of babies that have been murdered. 21 million black babies alone since 1973. 21 million. No wonder, Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, said that she wanted to destroy the black community. Let's speak up for those in Black History Month. And by the way, every day is Black History.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Skett. Anybody else for public comment? Okay, I see none. We will move on to agenda item number 9, the administrator's report.
Yes, one quick item today. Just wanted to recognize Charles and the team at Frederick Meyer Gardens and Sculpture Park. They were named the best sculpture park in the United States for the 3rd consecutive year, and it's just amazing that we have them as a part of our county.
Congratulations. All right, item number 10, reports. I will give one briefly. I wanted to share the appointments that I've made to the Standing Rules Subcommittee. Appointments are Commissioner Pakla, Commissioner Steck, Commissioner Halstead, and myself, the chair. So we are in the process of getting that underway, and we'll keep you up to speed. Are there any other reports? Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. On February 21st, the Fire Commission met, and Joni Lamming did a great job of chairing the election of our chairman and vice chairman. The board elected James Morris as the chair, and they elected myself as the vice chair. Ooh. And it was Commissioner Robin Halstead's first Fire Commission meeting. Thank you, Robin, for being part of the committee. And we also recognize Tom Antor for his service to the Fire Commission.
Thank you. Anybody else for reports? Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Green. Just a quick report. The Lakeshore Regional Entity Board did meet yesterday, and I feel like this is deja vu all over again. The financial challenges that system, the Medicaid system, faces under its current structure is daunting. It is targeted to probably be short of money in the region before we get to the summer. So stay tuned. I'll keep you advised of that as we go forward. And that's before we get to any changes at the state or federal level.
Thank you. Anyone else? Reports? Commissioner Morales.
Sure. So this was mentioned in the Community Health and Safety Committee earlier this week, but I'm chair of the KCCA Governing Board. I just wanted to thank everybody who came out to the Walk for Warmth event that was held on Saturday. We were able to raise $8,000 for the community, which is really great. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else? Reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to miscellaneous. I'm going to go first and just say, many of you know, shortly after our last meeting, Minority Vice Chair McLeod unfortunately lost her husband after a long illness that he battled through, Dave McLeod. So the services for him are tomorrow. And I ask that if you're able to, that you make it a point to attend. I'd also just like to ask that we just conduct a brief moment of silence in Dave's memory. Thank you. I appreciate it, and please keep the McLeods in your prayers. Okay, others for miscellaneous. Mr. Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Green. So normally this point of the meeting, we hear about all the state championships, our athletic teams, though we have a hockey team in Granville moving on to the regionals. I know Calvin Christian is very competitive in some of the sports too. But I want to highlight something a little bit different. Back in the 90s when I was on a school board, we made that big decision to build this gigantic school that housed 2,000 students. The battle was between one or two high schools. And when we made that choice to just build the single school, we wanted to provide opportunities to everyone. So I want to highlight something that we started. It was the robotics team. We also had an electric racing car team and other things to try to open that up. And I want to highlight the RoboDogs today. When they try out for their teams, we are blessed that we've got 6 teams that we field in Granville. Of that, between 80 and 100 students compete to be on those teams. We have, like I said, 6 with 6 team members. So this past week or so, the Granville High School robotics team are the 2025 State VEX Robotics Champions. And they brought home a new banner which helps them celebrate not their first state championship, but this is their 7th state championship in 9 years. And it just goes to show you that education has a lot of roots, a lot of good things that happen. Sporting and athletic teams are one of those. But there's other things to excel. And it is great that the support that the community gives that program. Part of the last millage was to build a school dedicated to technology, robotics, and actually built not an athletic field, but an arena that the robotics competitions can compete at. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. It's an incredible program. I know other schools in the area have them. I know Granville and I think Forest Hills were the first 2 in our county that started robotics programs. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Congratulations to Granville and to the STEM folks there. Great work. Anybody else from miscellaneous? Commissioner Bujak.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to echo some things we heard in public comment. We got a handout here on cryptocurrency. Thank you very much for the information. I'm currently researching cryptocurrency and the involvement of government in investing in cryptocurrency, and I'm currently investing in Bitcoin myself. We also had some comment about sanctuary cities, and I stand by our chair and support the federal government in its enforcement of immigration policies. Kent County is not a sanctuary county and never will be. I'd also like to comment about the Acton Institute. This is a Catholic policy think tank, and I encourage the commissioners to take a look at that website. This is a worldwide organization, and they have very interesting perspectives on immigration. They are located right here in Grand Rapids at the corner of Division and Fulton. And I also like to make a comment about Black History Month. Our President Trump invited a large group of Black American citizens to the White House to celebrate Black History Month. And at that celebration, President Trump awarded Tiger Woods the Presidential Medal of Freedom. If you haven't seen that on YouTube, check it out. Very worth checking out. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Faber.
Yeah, several of us attended an event last week on the 19th, Housing Kent's State of Housing Report. That report is available as we think about this Headwaters. A big portion of this is dedicated to affordable housing, and that report really gives us some good marching orders around resolving episodes of homelessness, stabilizing cost burden renters, producing subsidized housing, and eliminating racial and other disparities. So I encourage everyone to download that report, dig into that report. It was a really great session. And then I know everyone's been waiting with bated breath since I asked a question last week about how many monuments there are and how many corners there are in Kent County. A seemingly innocuous question that could not be answered, and the answer is 3,352. So we are maintaining 100 of those 3,352 monuments in our county.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you had 3,353, you lost on Price is Right rules. Commissioner Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair Green. I've got to give a shout out to my alma mater, the Lowell Red Arrows, on their wrestling team success. 12 years running as the state champion wrestling team. It's unbelievable. Coach RJ Boudreau just gets these kids prepared. They're great kids, great in the community. Our clerk, Lisa Postumus Lyons, has been a long-time wrestling parent, so congratulate to her and her family for all the success. Never gets old, so it's an unbelievable accomplishment, but 12 years running, so congratulations to the Lowell Red Arrow wrestling team.
Congrats to the Red Arrows and the student athletes. Anybody else? Miscellaneous. Commissioner Womack.
Yes, I'd like to thank the young lady from Lowell for coming to add to our public comment. And it goes back to what Commissioner Oliver King said earlier about making sure we include the voice of young people in all of our research. I just think it's amazing that somebody is caring about the human rights of others. I would also like to say that I do think that some of the statements that were said today by related to Commissioner Green wasn't exactly what he said, and you might want to review the video, but I do thank you for coming out today. And just very happy to be working with this board. We are not an instrument of the federal government. We don't have a lot of say on what the federal government does, but it's good to hear what you have to say, because any way that we can be a help to human rights, I can just say for myself, I can't speak for the whole board. But even knowing my colleagues on both sides, no matter what party, I've never seen any of my colleagues that would want to violate anybody's human rights. Some take one side of the law, some take another look at the law, but we all, and somebody can raise their hand if they disagree, but my colleagues, we've all been very concerned about human rights for all people.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else for miscellaneous? All right. One more item. We will be having our tour and work session at the Fuller campus beginning at, who can tell me the time? Where's the calendar? I don't have one. 10:30. Oh, thank you. That was Lori in the back. Photographers are here. I think they have more than one station set up, it looked like, in there. So please go across the hall and have your photograph taken. Everybody looks so nice. It's like picture day in school. Lori would appreciate that, and you'll look great on the new site. So, and then I'm sorry, who said the time for 10:30? 10:30, Fuller campus, details you have. With that, I will call on Commissioner Merchant for a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to adjourn.
Moved and supported. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.